the informed investor. Thanks to Century 21 agents, defying mediocrity and delivering extraordinary experiences.
And here he is at 17 and a half minutes to 10. Warren McCarthy, good evening and welcome.
Yes, good evening, Jane. Good to speak with you tonight.
Terrific to have you on the program. I love talking property all around the country. Look, we've had the fourth weekend of spring. It's flying by, and I know that spring is always, the time when everyone gets their properties ready and real estate agents advise you to put it on the market. How have things gone on the auction market last weekend in Sydney?
Once again, Jane, it is one of the best times of the year to be selling a property, and it's certainly everything comes to life, as they say. But look, the auction clearance rates have been excellent once again, a little bit down from last week, but when I say that, they're still up into the high 70s in both Sydney and Melbourne. Sydney had a 76.6% clearance rate, and Melbourne topped that mark at 77.8%.
Gee.
The other two cap cities that are showing some really good signs is Brisbane, 52.7%, and Adelaide cleared 59.2%. So really good to see. Perth, by the way, was 50%. Now, let's just contrast that with last year. Last year, Sydney's clearance rate was only 51%. Melbourne's was a tad under 54%. When you're talking Brisbane, I mentioned there was around about 53 this weekend gone. It was only 44% last year. And Adelaide was around about line ball with last year, but look at Perth. Last year was 25% clearance, and on the weekend was 50%. So there is certainly a good trend that's been continuing now for weeks on end. We're still down on the number of auction that were presented last year. In fact, there's about 17%, about 400-odd auctions down on last year. But what I'm seeing is that this demand is consistent. It's certainly been flowing since the election we had some 18 weeks ago. We've had a couple of interest rate reductions. People are able to get money again, and they're out there in their droves attending open houses and the auctions, and certainly at our offices at Century 21, we're experiencing some great flow of buyers. So I think it augurs well. We're, as you say, just into the first part of spring, and I think it's a really good sign as we head towards the summer.
And Warren, I absolutely take your point about the coalition government. There's certainty now for home buyers and investors. The other thing, when I look at those auction clearance rates that are up pretty much across the board, I wonder, are sellers being more realistic with their pricing? It seems, you've got to hit the market on the right note, don't you?
Well, you do, and I think a lot of sellers are probably thought, you know what, time for our plans to be put into action. If we sell and buy in the same market conditions, we're going to pick up what we might perceive to have lost in the price for their property, but really they're going to pick it up on their purchase. The market is good at doing that. It irons itself out over time, and real estate should be seen as a longer-term investment rather than short-term gain.
Now, New South Wales Public Spaces Minister Rob Stokes has made some comments today talking about the size of Australian apartments, and it's part of the broader point about why we need to build the types of dwellings that modern families want to live in. And I, for one, don't want to live in an apartment where you can't swing a cat. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. He said that large 4-bedroom apartments are going to be an important part of the real estate mix. What sort of demand are you seeing for apartments?
Well, it's interesting, the traditional has been the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom. And as you say, some of the 1 and 2 bedrooms are very tight. You can't swing a cat. 3 bedrooms getting a little bit more roomy to have that extra room if you only need the 2 bedrooms. But 4, I thought, gee, that's going to be interesting. It certainly needs to align with the demographic and who's going to really need that size accommodation going forward. But hey, a lot of people don't want the backyard. They don't want the upkeep and the maintenance. So why not have a bit more extra space within their apartment? What I would think also from the developer's side, they're going to look at that with some degree of commercial reality and say, you know what, the configuration that I can get out of my development is possibly going to be less if I have to apply some of my apartments to 4-bedroom in size. What that may do is then push the prices up as they try to retrieve and get a return on that investment that they've risked. So it's an interesting comment that's come out of the Minister, but I think there's probably a place for it going forward to try and meet all of the various requirements of the buyers in market.
And Warren, before the animal activists come after me, I'm not advocating swinging a cat in your apartment.
No, that's right. It's a phrase that's been used for a long time.
I know, but it's 2019 now, Warren, and all the rules have changed all of a sudden.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm talking to the informed investor, Warren McCarthy. He's the CEO of Century 21. Warren, when you invest in a property, you want growth. You want it to grow in value. You certainly don't want to find yourself ending up in negative equity. So when you look at it, as a rule of thumb, is it better to buy a cheaper, and I know this is a trick question for you, but is it better to buy a cheaper property in a cheaper suburb, or are the blue chip properties in the established suburbs more likely to give you, if you're looking for a faster return?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I'll have an each-way bet on that one, and I think you'll probably find the answer is both. But you know what? I did have a look at a couple of suburbs around the country, and just looking at some of the yields that they're returning as an investment area, and I picked out one in Victoria, suburbs Melton. It's about 45 minutes away from the CBD of Melbourne. They have a median price there of $405,000, which is rather cheap for a house. The rental yield is 4.2% on average.
Right.
Now, that's a very good return considering what you can get from other areas. And I think that's an area that's had compound growth rates in its suburb of some 11.8% over the past 5 years. Now, back into Sydney on the Central Coast, I picked out a suburb in Budgewoi. You may know it. Mm-hmm. It's about 1.5 hours to Sydney. Beautiful coastal environment. Their rental median is about $350 per week, so a little bit higher than the one in Melton. And their median price is $485,000. So again, a little bit more expensive, but their yields are 4.5%. So I think, wow, that's not a bad return as an asset class. The compounding rate of growth for that particular area of Budgewoi is 8.9% over the past 5 years. So there are some really good value suburbs around the country right at the moment that are actually returning fantastic yields that I haven't seen for some time, because we're used to sort of saying around 2 to 3% as the yield factor.
Yeah, so up to 4.5% as the yield factor is good. Warren, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks for giving us all of the data from the weekend.
Yeah, great to speak with you, Jane. Thank you.
There he is, Warren McCarthy, the informed investor, the CEO of Century 21.